Hello and welcome to the Warhammer Podcast, episode 135. I'm your host, Brad. This is my co-host, Eric.
How's it going?
And we have an extremely fun episode this week.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple spots that I'm not having quite as much fun, but in general, yeah.
What could be wrong with you, Grey Knight player?
Nothing at all. Grey Knights is perfect.
At least you get orcs.
That's true.
So, this week, we are going back to the classroom, but not just any classroom. We're going to do art class.
Hell yeah, dude. It's going to be an easy breeze, A for everybody.
We may not have had the same art teacher.
It's the blow-off class, right?
Yeah, so let's do this in the segment proper. For right now, without any further ado, let's grade every faction's cavalry.
Sounds good. All right, so starting with the interesting cavalry option, since this is originally a biker's idea.
Yeah, this is us learning vocabulary. So Merriam-Webster defines cavalry 1-A is an army component mounted on horseback. 1-B is an army component moving in motor vehicles or helicopters assigned to combat missions that require great mobility. Basically, cavalry doesn't exist anymore because we don't ride horses into battle, so it now includes things like motorcycles and helicopters.
Yeah, I was actually shocked to see helicopters included in like the standard dictionary. Like, I'm on board because it's just like, you know, this is your fast attack, like strategic kind of thing. So like, yeah, helicopters fit that role, but I need to see it definition.
So we're basically going to, because this is art class, we're going to be judging off of more aesthetic value than anything, and it's going to be having the thing we asked for gets you up to like a C, and then you argue your way up from there. But everybody, absolutely everybody, must submit homework because no one's been showing up to art class or giving a shit about it all semester. So no matter how bad you are, no matter how embarrassing it is that you remember that time back in high school when everybody was laughing at you in class because you can't fucking draw, yeah, no matter how scarring this is, you will be submitting your homework today.
Hey man, stick figures count.
Grey Knights submitted a stick figure.
Yeah.
As long as you've got an animal that you're riding with a unit on top of it, or you've got bikes, jet bikes, something more esoteric that's like a quadrupedal thing in an emergency if you don't have any of these. But we're not going to be accepting things that are cars, buggies, things with four wheels.
And you can submit more than one because, like you said, everybody's been kind of skipping art class. So we're okay with you doing above and beyond. Might help your grade a little bit, you know, if you make us happy.
We won't affect the grade of your best model, which is what you'll get your grade on, but extra submissions will count for extra credit at the end of the semester to help get everyone's grades up in the class. You should also have no more than one person on it, too, if it's like a tandem bike and you want to argue it, like if it's got a sidecar. And whether you're on a bike or a horse, you should be wearing your damn helmets. Safety first, kids.
It is very important.
All right, so let's begin. Let's start with Xenos.
Ooh.
All right, Eldar, it's time for you to finally impress. It's your time to shine. Art class is probably going to be your major.
Yeah, I think you can figure this one out.
Well, Eldar heard extra credit, and because they're a bunch of nerds, they went hard.
Well, I mean, they kind of need it for some of the other stuff, so,
They tried to submit more, but I stopped them after the fourth one because I was sick of watching them put people on bikes. They've got Shroud Runners, Shining Spears, Wind Riders, Farseer on Skyrunner. Then they tried to submit the Warlock on Skyrunner, and I went, no, that's the same thing. You can't trick me.
I mean, these are hover bikes.
They are absolutely hover bikes. They look every bit a hover bike. You look at it and you're like, damn, that's a hover bike. I don't really have any issue. I'll go as far as to say, even though I was thinking tandem bikes should be like only in an extreme, the Shroud Runners look great. They did a really good job on this homework assignment.
It honestly is pretty awesome, but it's not like the other ones, like, you know, the Shining Spear, perfectly fine. Like, it's good too.
I'd go as far as to say the Wind Riders are the exact definition of a hover bike.
All right, I can accept that. If you were trying to think of like what it could be, this is it.
This is the starting point that all others fork off from.
Which is a good starting point, honestly. It's sleek, and it hovers, and it carries a person, and it looks fast.
It looks very fast. I'm going to go ahead and say, on this completely objective art assignment, of which you always get the grade you deserve, A for Eldar. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think so. There's not really anything to take away from it. Even like the tandem one, like you said, it actually does it quite well. So seems like an A to me.
I'm giving him 3 extra credit points for the end of semester later. We'll see how those come into play when we do our report cards.
Well, let's keep in theme and move on to Harlequins.
We're going to count them separate. As much as GW wants us to forget, we never will. Harlequins submitted the Skyweavers, which honestly looks sick. They definitely went all out on the art assignment. They went super hard with the paint job. They've got some Harlequining diamonds on their design. They've got both melee and a gun underneath, which is like tied with the shining spears there and going both ways with that. One of the melee options being a sweet bolus that they can throw. I have trouble thinking of something more beautiful.
It is tandem, which, like we said, not optimal, but like this pulls it off pretty well again.
When you pull it off, it really doesn't matter what the assignment told you to do. It matters what your art teacher feels like this week.
Very true. And like, this doesn't have to be tandem. That person's just kind of like standing there. They're just super balanced and it looks great in like the art. So, I mean, I think they nail it.
Solid A again. I really think that the Eldar are running away with this and probably will going into Drukhari with a strict upgrade over what the Aeldari brought to the table. The Reavers. Good lord. You took the requirements and you themed it so hard into being an edgelord. This is the class the Burnout is finally good at. Smoke pot, doodle pictures in the back of the classroom. We all knew what this was going to end up with Drukhari.
The Reaver has got like an intimidating profile while also being that sleek, fast, kind of perfect for bike.
I'm going with this is getting a perfect A+.
I think this one's an A+ as well. They didn't even try and add on the tandem and like, no. Focused.
I really believe that the Drukhari are going to grow up to make a wonderful career, very successful out of drawing art for Space Wolf players.
It's probably going to be pretty successful, so hey, it works out, man. I support this vision of the future.
All right, moving on. Let's go to a more classic example of a standard bike.
Yeah, Genestealers.
Yeah, dirt bikes through and through. They've got both the Atellan Jackals, which is clearly exactly what we're asking for, and they submitted the Jackal Alphys for a little bit of extra credit.
It makes sense. It's one of those, like, the Atellan Jackals has, like, the ATV, so it's like, oh, just in case. Hey, we've also got, like, just the bike.
Yeah, but I'm not going to fault you for including the ATV as a little bonus. It's very clear that the core part of this unit is all of your dirt bikers. Honestly, from a pure aesthetic standpoint, the detail work that went into these bikes, it's beautiful. You bothered to show your shocks, you're showing engines to a decent level of detail here, bags over the back, full of beautiful highlights and everything else. This is once again a great start to the day.
It's interesting because if we look at the current like A+ Drukhari compared to the Genestealers, vastly different.
But luckily, art is subjective as much as grades are objective, and that superposition of objectivity and subjectivity means these also get an A+.
I think so, just because they do it so well. And it's, again, it's, you know, we're trying to get a cavalry option. We didn't say it had to be hover, we didn't say it had to be whatever. Like, this is, you know, your artistic take on it, and I think the Genestealers nail the dirt bike aesthetic.
I'm also going to tack on that they get an extra credit point for submitting the Alphys in addition.
Yeah, I think that's fine.
Now, I'm sure that everyone is going to do this good of a job and we're getting A's to the whole class. It's going to be a wonderful day ahead of us. Tyranids, what did you submit?
This one might be a little tough given the nature of Tyranids being the assimilating biological thing. Not so many bikes in that aesthetic.
Do you have anything riding horses?
Not really.
Do you have anything that moves around with other things riding on top of it at all?
I mean, yeah, obviously.
What would be this example?
That would be the Biovore.
All right. For those who aren't familiar with the Tyranids, can you explain the logic behind the Biovore as our main submission here?
Yeah, it's a little weird, but the Biovore has the spore mines, which technically are their own thing and can move around on their own and be a unique Tyranid thing.
This is true, as all Tyranid ammunition and mines and everything else you can think of are themselves other Tyranid bioforms.
So, like, the Biovore technically is carrying its ammunition, which are the spore mines. So, like, kind of, it's a bike.
I'll honestly give it to them on a technical level. They're not getting a good grade today. But on a technical level, this is a horse equivalent carrying a person equivalent by being something that is ammunition being carried around on top of the tank. Okay, only because they're both actually alive, I'm going to give this as a possibility of cavalry.
Yeah, and there's a lot of justifying this as a submission as opposed to highlighting the good parts and like maybe showing off some of the this needs a little bit of work parts. This is more of a how do I justify this isn't a failure, because I don't want to actually fail you at the moment.
Looking at your other attempt here with the gargoyles, which I am going to throw out in this case, I'm not going to accept them, but they do prove the point of your weakness here. Do not ever attempt to make art again. Stick to other classes. You can have a D so that you can get out of my classroom.
And please stop eating the crayons.
No, Eric, that was the Space Marine player next to them.
Ah, everything makes a little bit more sense. Yeah, let's move on from Tyranids into Orks.
Oh, my eyes, they're healing.
Yeah, there's a couple submissions from Orks, and let's start with the bike. You know, the war bikers. This is an Ork bike.
As ramshackle as they are, I will give them that they clearly attempted to make bikes in an orky fashion. I can tell it's a bike just by its shape alone, even if I'm questioning if I would ever want to get on this thing.
Oh, hell no.
I am more surprised by the fact that they brought other forms of cavalry in the Squighog boys, who pull off cavalry damn near perfectly, and Defcoptas, which, as we learned from Merriam-Webster, is allowed as a submission, as helicopters are a form of cavalry. And while I would probably give some points off on the Warbikers for their clear, shoddy construction,
I think that's the aesthetic.
do you think it's on purpose? Is it brilliance? Is this the trash can sitting in the middle of the modern art facility that's actually part of the art itself?
I think it is. I think it's very much a design choice of the aesthetic as opposed to I just didn't know how to draw a bike. Because, like, it's clearly a bike with aesthetic filter on it of being ramshackle.
I guess you're right. They are wearing their helmets. They clearly listen to the instructions.
That is very important to have safety, especially on something as potentially dubious as this.
I won't condone getting on these bikes, but at least they're aware of the danger and are wearing their helmets. Is it brilliant, or is it not on purpose, is my problem right now. Looking at the Squighog boys, I feel like this is the safer, like, B+, A- range. I feel like the Warbikers are either an A+ bit of brilliance, or are like a C you barely pulled off getting a correct bike.
If they had just submitted the Warbikers, I feel like you would have had to have like accepted that like this is what they had kind of thing. Like it wasn't really thought out. But because they're also submitting the Squighog boys and the Defcoptas, I think there's an amount of brilliance in those two submissions of like, okay, the Squighog boys, here's your dude on horse kind of equivalent with the orc. And then, I mean, Defcoptas is this like wild idea that they like took to the actual core idea of what a cavalry is and was like, yeah, a Defcopta. And this is a cool helicopter. So like,
yeah, it's possible that we're looking at the next Picasso here. A+ for Orks. I want to be sure I'm on the right side of history. If they end up going into art, I want to be known as the first person to have realized their true genius.
I'm very excited to see what they do next because this is strong submission.
And for Brazilians in the audience, Barilio would like you to know that he has a Picasso as well.
And I think the Orcs get 2 extra credit on this one as well, because...
Yes, we'll give them 2 extra credit points. Oh, Necrons, what are you doing? Did you do this just before class? Do you know what a bike looks like?
All right, Necrons. I understand that you're super old, but, like, bikes are a pretty ubiquitous idea. And, like, you could have done just cavalry in general, any of those aesthetics. Orcs even showed you can do helicopter, and you chose You chose the Tomb Blade.
You made your hover bike into a wheel itself.
The Droideka is not the aesthetic that you want to emulate.
This is like the bad modern art. This is the joke that you put into like a sitcom to show what people think of modern art.
It's either that or one of those non-artistic individuals that like tried really, really hard to do that modernism and just doesn't understand art. This is what we get.
They're too logical for this art class. Get out of here. This is like a C minus C. No, this is a C.
I think it's a C.
It is a hover bike. We can't fault them below that. The school board won't let me do that anymore.
Yeah, it's one of those, like, as a teacher, we have to have some acceptance that, like, this is clearly not what we would like to see out of art. But you did the assignment. It is a hover bike.
But it's art class, so we don't have to give you full points.
No, you get a C.
I love how this is like slowly over the episode, everyone realizing how much I fucking hated art class.
I think that was pretty obvious. Very
It was
early.
pretty obvious early. By now it's like, Jesus Christ. We're having a therapy session, aren't we?
Yeah, right. All right, let's move on from Necrons into Votann. Hopefully you've got a better option.
Ooh, they went with a retro-futuristic look, clearly taking from the 1950s futurism aesthetic. This is a wonderful example of high-end art.
Interesting.
They knew that they shouldn't do a tandem bike as their main submission, but they included one to show that they could, within their aesthetic, expand.
Right.
But they did it controlled and had the other ones be solo. Genius. True genius.
Yeah, I mean, it's potentially close, but, I mean, you put the front and center person without their helmet on, so...
Oh no, you were supposed to follow basic instructions, Votann. It harms us more than it harms you to receive a bad grade. But like, as your teacher and your mentor figure, it's somehow more damaging to me than you, who's going to be beaten by your father for this. So we're giving you a B.
Yeah, I mean, there isn't really anything bad with it. It's just...
No, it's a very good submission. The trike aesthetic, being a hover trike, is strange, but it's very clearly a purposeful choice, well executed, whether you like the aesthetic or not. I have very little reason to take points off officially here, but this is art class, so reason's out the window. B it is.
I think we can give them a B+ and they won't complain.
All right, B+ so that we don't have to deal with them after class then. Fair enough. I don't want to have to deal with children with this hangover either.
Let's move on to Tau, though, because I am excited to see what they've put together.
I'm shocked here. So the Tau themselves would not be getting a high grade. The Piranha is their submission, and it's bordering on being a buggy.
It's basically a buggy. The way the passenger is clearly part of it, it's not like a tandem or anything. It's like, I don't know, it feels like it's a transport buggy as opposed to a bike.
The two drones on the front also being docked onto it, it's approaching not believable. However, they were saved by the Kroot.
And this is where it does get interesting because, yeah, the Kroot have cavalry as its like on mounted horseback, but Kroot.
Kroot on Krootok's back.
Yeah, with the Kroot Lone Spear, Krootox Rampagers, and Krootox Rider. A few submissions that are all, you know, in the same idea.
They definitely prove that they can do this aesthetic, understand the assignment, repeat the task multiple times. Of the bunch, I have to point out that the Lone Spear has the most beautiful mount that we may see today. The giant salamander is adorable.
It is pretty cool. I enjoy the, like, detail done to it kind of thing. They went above and beyond with, you know, like some of like the fuck are the frills called on the salamander's face.
Tendrils, I think.
It is cool to see the amount of extra little details done to it.
And I have to give points. You knew you were supposed to wear your helmet. Kroot heads don't really fit helmets well. So you strapped on an armor plate as best you could given your anatomy. Points to you. Thank you for trying. I'm aware that it's a bit discriminatory of the school to have to demand helmets of everybody when we know that some people aren't capable of fitting helmets on top of their heads. We'll have to work on these rules as we go on. We'll bring it up at the next teacher staff meeting to get some exceptions for certain anatomies.
But I think, you know, it follows the intent on why the helmets are required of like, hey, protect your head in case there's an accident. Well, hey, it's not quite the same as the normal expected helmet that, the staff is expecting, but this does the job, and it shows the intent of, hey, we want to protect the head. I do enjoy the fact that with the extra submissions, you showed unique styles of mounts, and it's not just one, it's, hey, we've got this Yeti.
Yeah, the Crudox kind of, I could see the Yeti look.
Yeah, the like gorilla kind of style mount, while you also have, your Lone Spear on this axolotl salamander thing. Very different mount aesthetics, but goes perfectly well.
It shows you have dedication to getting a high grade on this assignment through and through. I'm even going to, in addition to giving the A for the Lone Spear, I will give you all 3 of your extra credits, even though the Piranha should not have gotten the point. But I need you to know that we're doing this out of the kindness of our hearts because of how wonderful your submissions were.
I'm okay with that. It's probably not supposed to be done, but feeling a bit generous because the 3 primary submissions did such a good job. And that wraps up Xenos. Do we want to do Chaos?
Yeah, let's do Chaos next. So let's start off with Demons. Demons submitted a lot. They submitted 1 for every god. I'm going to say the Tzeentch one isn't going to get credit in this case. However, I appreciate you attempting to submit 4 homework assignments. It shows a lot of initiative.
And so like the Burning Chariot, not really.
The problem for Tzeentch is they're not very good at having mounted units because they're busy turning into mounts.
Yeah.
Screamers are strange.
I mean, it's the whole change thing.
We'll get back to them with Thousand Suns.
Very interesting submission. I appreciate it aesthetically, but it's not Cavalry. So we'll ignore that. You do have 3 other like actual submissions though.
And I'm pretty impressed that you managed this on a very strange army. So we've got the Seekers for Slaanesh. We've got Plague Drones for Nurgle and Blood Crushers for Khorne. All of these showing you understand the assignment and have variety.
Yeah, I mean, they're exceptionally different from each other and yet aesthetically kind of fit. It all fits the general idea of a cavalry.
I have to say, from a variety standpoint, it's here. I think the main submission should be the Seekers. They look the most like a typical horse cavalry unit. They clearly don't have the highest skill level to the final submission here. They're looking pretty ragged.
And I don't think that was particularly intentional.
No, it shows a lack of skill refining their lines and their shapes.
Absolutely wonderful that this is the idea that you were trying to obtain, but you need to work a bit more on the fundamentals to actually get the full end result from what was in your brain.
Yeah, I'm going to say it's a B-, but you're going to get 2 points of extra credit for the Plague Drones and the Blood Crushers.
I think so. The Plague Drones are a fascinating submission given the nastiness that you've really shown, while still obviously being this cavalry sort of like a helicopter, but like clearly using a living mount. So really cool.
And given the issues we just had with the Kroot and seeing them try to strap something on their heads, I'm not going to dock points for not being able to get a helmet onto your giant horned heads. I think we need to bring this up with the school board about helmets. It may be problematic long term to have this rule.
I think it might be. It's one thing when like, the Kroots had potential to like strap something on and be like, hey, we tried. There's like no real good way of doing that. With many demons.
If demons' parents show up and like, I don't want to deal with Khorne, and Slaanesh would absolutely sue.
And I just don't want Nurgle on campus.
Showing up to the parent-teacher conference at all? Yeah. All right, let's move into CSM. Surely, such a large range will have a high-quality bike to score an easy A.
So, CSM has submitted the Chaos Bikers.
No, you're not getting above a C. This is the lowest quality, technically, a bike I've ever seen, and I can clearly tell this is not on purpose like the Orks can get away with.
This is, I forgot the assignment, and 5 minutes before class, I was reminded by a friend, so I made this.
Yeah, this is stick figure level right here.
It really is.
Technically, you tried to submit something, but I'm not accepting this. You do have the Lord Discordant on Hellstalker, though.
Oh, All right. That's a far more interesting submission.
Now it gets to the point where it's very large and should probably just be a vehicle GW, but we're going to say that it's a cavalry for today, even though it should be a vehicle GW.
I mean, there are things like having elephant cavalry, essentially. So I guess, like, if you're trying to go on that style of intent, maybe, but yeah, the Lord Discordant on Hellstalker is a dude on a mount.
A very well executed mount, aesthetically speaking. I don't want it within 100 miles of me. I never want it to look at me with that face. However, I will say this is a detailed depiction of horror. This art is making me feel something, and it's fear.
It's definitely a design intent. Like, the entire aesthetic is intended. You know, we can't really say that on the KS Bikers other than, like, the design intent was lazy and boring. This is intricate and scary.
It's a little too noisy on the details. He really didn't need a giant chain gun off to the side. There's some amateurish stuff that makes me feel like this is a mid-class doodle of your typical edgy teenager.
This is the typical edgy teenager that had the core idea, and it's great, and then added some guns and kept going kind of thing, because more is cooler.
It's definitely DeviantArt, but it's at least DeviantArt. It's like above Tumblr. I'm gonna say it's worth at least a B.
I can accept a B. Yes, this is cavalry. There's some problems, clearly, but you have the core, and it is executed well.
Also, for the canon of teaching all the factions, I like to believe that they really did spend all night working on the Chaos Bikers, and then they doodled the Lord Discordant in the class before and threw it in for extra credit, and we graded it and made the Bikers into extra credit.
That would actually kind of make sense of, like, this is their random doodle, and that's why it's so, let's just put a chain gun on it.
So let's give the Chaos Bikers the extra credit point and the Hellstalker its B.
All right, fine. They shouldn't get that extra credit point, but fine.
It's low tier, but we've allowed some low tier extra credits.
Death Guard. This is going to be a tough one.
Oh, Death Guard. Oof. You're really, like, not liking coming to art class, but you're forced to come here. Spiritually, I feel you.
You don't say.
The Mephitic Blight Hauler is your submission, and it doesn't even have someone being carried. You technically submitted something. I never want to see you in my class again. I'm going to give you a D just for trying to submit something so that you pass and I don't have to see you next semester. Please never take an art elective.
I think that that's the thing, is, like, clearly you don't want to make this submission to homework, but, like, you vaguely understand and then just don't fucking care. It's kind of like maybe a cavalry, and then, like, you just stopped caring and were like, I'm just gonna not, and here's what you get because I don't care anymore.
Yeah, look, just be happy that you're not failing the class. All right, let's move to Thousand Suns. It looks like these nerds brought in a lot of extra credit because they just can't help themselves when they hear that.
That seems right.
The main submission is clearly the Zongor Enlightened to me, the actual unit. They've got the ability to have bows or melee, however they're feeling that day. We've got the Exalted Sorcerer on disc as a bonus submission, and the Shaman as a bonus submission. This is definitely where we see where Tzeentch was spending the time. Instead of dealing with Tzeentch demons, they were turning Tzeentch demons into discs so that the Thousand Suns could ride around on them.
I think it fits quite well to the, biker cavalry idea of a fast way to get somewhere, and it's one person riding each disc kind of thing. Looks like they have helmets, shockingly.
I think they're paying off with this choice because this student is clearly going to pass. I like the wild idea of really going out there. It's a stretch as a bike or a cavalry, but I have trouble arguing against it when I remember that each of these discs is a screamer that was sculpted into a disc lore-wise.
It's a bit difficult just because, looking at it from, the proportions kind of thing, clearly the infantry model is a large portion. compared to what you would expect out of any other cavalry. Like usually the thing carrying the person is larger.
Yeah. However, like, it's rough because, like, I want to say the cleverness pays off, but I feel like they may have gone too clever with it and you just can't get perfection out of it. They tried too hard and I think they're going to land at like a B.
I can't really argue more than a B.
I appreciate the idea you went for. It's a failed execution when we asked for cavalry, but it is clear that you were trying something unique here. Unfortunately, art class is not objective and your teacher is probably an asshole. However, a B's not bad. 2 points of extra credit on top. The nerd is going to be salty about this for days, perhaps into his adult life when he has a podcast and talks as though he is an art teacher. We'll find out.
All right, that leaves us with World Eaters, historically known for having bikes.
However, they do have a character who has a mount. And much in the way of the Blood Crushers, it's riding a bull thing.
Yeah, the Lord on Juggernaut is obviously a mounted unit.
You could say mounted on a Juggernaut. So yeah, the weird rhino, it's a little out of left field as far as horses are concerned, but Eric was arguing for elephants earlier, so...
Yeah, it depends on your terrain, right? Sometimes you have camels, and it's just better than horses for what you're trying to do.
They tried to sneak in extra credit for Lord Invocatus, but I can tell you just literally used the Xerox before class. It's not going to work.
Good try, good try.
It's always good to try to get one over the art teacher, but we're going to still grade this one highly, I think. I do have to bring off points for being helmetless in this art, though. I don't think I can give you an A with this.
Interestingly, that Lord Invocatus actually does have a helmet, so maybe we just accept that one instead?
Well, it's kind of a blurred line. The helmet became his face.
Yeah. But like...
I guess, is exoskeleton good enough to be a helmet? I suppose.
It's got the intent of a helmet, kind of.
You know what? I don't want to get dragged into this with the student. Let's just give them an A-. They're not going to question.
No, they're going to be happy with an A-.
Someone may have to teach the World Eaters what an A is. I don't know if they've received a grade this high.
It's true. I also don't think they care, so...
They really don't care about grades.
It's pretty wasted effort of us actually giving a grade, but...
They're getting into college based entirely off of their football skills. Just don't blow the knee out.
Right. All right, that leads us into... No, we have one more, actually. We've got Chaos Knights.
I want to be mad, but I just can't.
You submitted the War Dogs because obviously you submitted the War Dogs. You've never not submitted the War Dogs.
I kind of have to give it to him on a technical standpoint, though. I did say a person mounted into a small vehicle. Single person, one dude is in it. It's only got the 2 legs. It's not that big. It's clearly not a buggy or anything. You could argue it's as close to a bike as a buggy.
Which is fair. Like, it's clearly not getting a good grade.
It's even called a dog. You could argue that's a form of cavalry. I might just say it's worth a solid C. It did the job in all the ways it shouldn't be able to.
Yeah.
Wrong equation, right answer.
And I kind of hate the fact that the War Dogs always end up in that spot.
Well, sometimes they're lower.
Yeah, but like it's one of those where it's like somehow we can argue it and never should we.
We are absolutely not accepting all of the other War Dogs as extra credit, though. You cannot get that.
No.
All right, it's time to move on into the Imperium. We'll just start with Imperial Knights. Yeah, you can have your C2. Get out of here.
Basically. And you don't get anything else. Accept it. Be happy. You don't deserve it. How about moving on to actual Space Marines?
Space Marines, why did you try to submit a Primaris Lieutenant? Oh, I found it. Your Outrider squad got stuck to the back of this one here.
It's a bike.
First of all, we need to have a conversation with the classroom. Space Wolves, I see you attempted to put in some extra credit here, but it's clearly your fetish porn. Please stop trying to submit your fetish as art.
It will work for you once you hit, like, getting a job, but this is school and we have rules.
Also, I'm pretty sure Drukhari drew this for you. In which case, great enterprise, Drukhari.
Yeah.
You have a solid future ahead of you. Get that cash.
But the actual Outrider squad, it's a bike.
It sure is a bike. It's also a brick. There is no aesthetic value to this model. It's not purposefully bad like the Chaos Biker was.
Nor is it a particularly impressive representation like Genestealers had their dirt bikes.
This is the bare minimum. If this was a hover bike, I might even give you some style points for like a brutalistic, different interpretation, but like, this is just a fat wheeled Tonka truck ass bike. I'm giving you a C and you're lucky you're getting it. I can't give you lower. The school board won't let me anymore.
Yeah, if you had argued it, we would have been like, yeah, I guess it does hit all of the requirements, but like, this isn't art. This is fucking trash. So you get a C.
This is fucking trash. See, you're also getting into my art teacher persona.
Hey, I took art a little bit.
It took the legally required amount.
Yeah, it was forced upon us. And then any of the art stuff was all music, and music is easy.
I know, I had to take art because I didn't want to do music.
Music is so much easier.
Both of them should be removed from the curriculum.
Let's move on to Sisters.
Sisters went kind of weird with it, and I'm kind of here for it. You've got the Mortifiers, the Paragon Warsuit, and the Penitent Engine. And look, if I'm giving a C to those fucking war dogs, I'm giving better to you. These have aesthetics out the wazoo. They're much more bike-sized while being these strange walkers. I'm enjoying it. You even, on this Mortifier, she's wearing protective armor of a sarcophagus. She's not taking any risks in a crash.
It's potentially too far on the helmet for one of them, but
the other one's just wearing a normal helmet. It's fine.
Yeah, it's one of those, like, clearly you understand helmet was required, nailed it, and then you were like, helmets are fucking stupid for some things. I'm gonna rebel a little bit and put them in a sarcophagus.
Yeah. I'm here for it. And you did it in a classy way with a bunch of detail, absolute beautiful aesthetics that are within line of what you have for a range. Everything seems right. I just feel like giving you an A on this one.
Honestly, if they didn't go above and beyond and like take a dig at the whole helmeted thing in a artistic manner, I probably would have went with like an A- because it's just a little bit too far with the walker. But I think that they nailed like a lot of art trying to like speak beyond just the submission kind of thing and like critique the rules of society essentially. So I think they nailed it. I just don't know if we give extra credit.
Yeah, I have to at least give extra credit for the Paragon Warsuits.
One of them? Okay.
Yeah, we won't do Morganval, we won't do the Penitent Engine. This is stretching it too far, but you can have your A and an extra credit.
Nailed it.
Custodes. Look at these big, chonky jet bikes that are beautifully stylized, huge Aquila wings going over the front. I'm here for it.
It's definitely an aesthetic.
It's smashing you in the face with its aesthetic. Its aesthetic is gold.
Its aesthetic is gold, yes. And, you know, it's one of those, like, they did it well. It's one thing to have an aesthetic and then you just, like, don't execute particularly well on it. But I think the Virtus Praetors do this hover bike gold in bold, and it nails it.
I do have to say, it's a bit too heavy on the front end compared to the back end. If we're getting into it from an art standpoint, I think some points have to come off here. It might be an A-.
Oh, I mean, definitely it's something that, like, you know, in the notes section is like your proportions aren't quite balanced. It's, you know, lacking a bit, but I don't know if it's quite enough to knock it down even to A-.
I think it is. Like, just looking at our other A's, I can't say it's to the same caliber.
Yeah, all right. I think I can get behind an A-.
Also, one of you has your helmet off, which already, if I give an A to this, I'm going to hear about it from the vice principal.
Yeah, I think that that's fair. A- and like a little bit of tweaks, you know, on the front, I think. Slim it down a little bit, add a little bit extra on the back, and like great design intent. Just a little bit of refinement needed.
Wow. Speaking of refinement,
We've got AdMech.
this is stunning.
Yeah, Cavalry with an aesthetic design on top of just like the art style. Oh my god, dude, you nailed it.
I'm honestly giving an A plus and giving you extra credit for the other one. So you've got your Raiders and your Sulphur Hounds. The fact that you went into the detail and made it so the Sulphur Hounds have flamethrowers for their muzzles of their dog horse faces is genius. Absolute genius.
Yeah, I mean, obviously these are mounted cavalry.
You could say that when we were originally not doing this as an art project, they were going to be the A plus that everything was based off of, if we were to do something like that. However,
even then, it's not just like dude on horse. It's clearly an entire aesthetic that's been adapted really well to dude on horse.
I think the AdMech could pursue a great career in art. They could probably overcharge like crazy too.
I mean, it's one of those locksmith kind of things, right? Like, oh, the locksmith shows up for 2 minutes and unlocks your door and charges you a shitload. And it's like, well, it's because he's experienced and is so good at the trade.
You could probably overcharge like crazy for like literally everything you make.
Yeah, very impressive. Well done.
And you could go your entire career without making any cool robots other than once.
I mean, I could definitely see this aesthetic being adapted into, you know, something like the Sisters or the Knights, and like, you know, let's put them upright in a walker style. Like, this could go pretty hard, but not quite there, I guess. Looking forward to it. A plus though. All right, let's move into Astra Militarum.
The Imperial Guard from the hit game Space Marine 2.
Yes.
We're not looking at any Cadians here. I'm actually impressed by that fact.
I feel like had there been a Cadian aesthetic, it probably would have done worse.
It would have been more boring, that's for damn sure.
Right? Like, we've got the Attilan Rough Riders and the Death Riders.
Yeah, the Death Riders are pushing it. They're going to be your extra credit point.
It's the extra credit point. When painted extremely well, it can look cool.
To cover up how bad the sculpt is, yeah.
The sculpt is a blank canvas for the artist.
It's really blank.
It's really blank. But the Attilan Rough Riders, all right, we've got cavalry. We're in the person on horse going to war cavalry.
You are not capable of getting more literal than they did. And they pull it off while looking good. This is exactly what we're looking for. This is another A+. I'm so happy that a lot of the students who I tend not to see doing well in classes are crushing it in art class today.
Yeah, it is honestly great to see it. And like you said, this is well executed. It's very easy to have made person on horse look boring.
Yeah, it's really nice to see that, like, they stuck with the classic look, but executed it as well as could be expected. I'm very happy about giving them the A+, the extra credit point, and we can move on to something, all right?
Yeah, again, reminder, we basically forced everyone to submit something.
And the Imperial Agents does technically exist now, unfortunately.
I like it. I'm happy about it. But it's not because of this submission. I'm not happy about this submission.
Well, we said helicopters were allowed, and the Imperial Agents showed off their brand new stolen Corvus Blackstar, which, while it's a plane, has the ability to hover in place, which they're trying to argue means they should get at least a C. I'm not buying that.
No, very much not cavalry at all.
This is a D-. You get an exact 60%, literally the lowest score I can give you while getting you out of my classroom.
This is clearly an aircraft transport, not cavalry. So yeah, D- because we kind of forced you to submit something and like you had nothing else. That's fair.
All right, we'll finish on a high note. Grey Knights, such a great student, never really screws up horribly.
I'm so happy you just didn't submit anything. It's okay. I'll let this one pass. We'll just give you a 0 and ignore that it ever happened.
The Nemesis Dread Knight.
No, the Nemesis Dread Knight.
Eric, I would like you to grade the Nemesis Dread Knight as a cavalry unit.
As a cavalry. I was like, ooh, the Nemesis Dread Knight is a fantastic model. It's super fun to play.
Do you know the worst part? I'm going to give it a C+, because looking at the War Dogs, which I gave a C, it follows suit and does it slightly better as the dude is exposed and is not in a whole cockpit. I'm going to say it gets a C+, somehow.
It's an extremely generous C+.
Oh, Space Marines is going to be seething after class, but luckily it's art class, so the points don't matter.
I think I'm okay with C plus on this, just as I know that this assignment has emotionally scarred Grey Knights. Because you should have the options of something else, and it would have been so very cool.
Literally anything else.
Yeah.
We could riddle off a lot of ways you could give Grey Knights bikes, given they have, the Armory of Titan, all of the secret bestest weapons of 30K's technology.
Just kind of like looking at Custodes and being like that, but in a different aesthetic.
Even Space Marines of, look, it should at least be this good, even though it's supposed to be better. Like, literally anything.
And honestly, like, at a certain aspect, the chunky bike kind of makes a little bit of sense for a Terminator.
I could almost buy that.
Could almost, like, there's, obviously, it would need to be different than the Outrider because that has fundamental issues. But, like, the chunky aspect could kind of work for the Terminator chunky. But those are all ideas that were never actually put to paper.
I am going to ignore you attempting to submit your Grandmaster Nemesis Dread. A, he's got no helmet, and B, it's the same thing and you can't convince me otherwise.
I mean, it is the same thing. That's perfectly fair. C+, and hopefully this assignment isn't going to be something you talk about with your therapist for the next 2 decades.
I don't have
No, you have a podcast instead of therapy.
Men will do anything but go to therapy.
Even start their own podcast.
All right, that finishes up class. Everyone got their grades. This was an incredibly fun one. I don't know if you can tell my opinions on art class in high school.
I mean, it sounds like you had some of the greatest times of your life in art class, and I'm honestly shocked that you didn't pursue it as, further education and going to an art school and potentially into a career.
Yeah, it's weird how I ended up in computer science and an engineering school instead. Shocking that.
Real curveball on that one. But yeah, this was fun and kind of interesting to see the different aesthetics to, like, the fast attack cavalry idea. It's not just bikes and not just hover bikes.
I am really glad we found the definition for cavalry. For an aside, when we had this episode, the idea was I wanted to show off AdMech. I love their horse dog weird things. And I was like, we need to do this as an episode, like everybody's horse unit, mounted unit. And then I was thinking of ways to do it. I'm like, mounted unit sounds stupid, but like more people have bikes than horses, so I guess it has to be everybody's bike, and then we'll explain that we're counting cavalry. And then, like, on a whim, I was like, I should Google if cavalry is, like, broader than just people on horses, and then it was.
It totally makes sense.
It does. So the word isn't completely archaic, it just updated to other forms of mounted infantry units.
It definitely helped the defense on some of these. But yeah, very cool.
If you enjoyed this episode and you want to help support the show, we've got merch at Orchid8, and we have a Patreon at patreon.com/solely-singleton.
Don't forget to do the YouTube pleasantries, like and subscribe.
I can't believe Eric said it in one take. I'm really proud of him.
I'm proud of me too. One day I'll be able to shill.
Just to have Bricky on in like an earpiece, just repeating what he says without thinking. Man, he sounds so fluent in shill. It's like he was taking classes.
It would only take like 6 or 7 tries.
It's the shilling equivalent of the dude on the date in like a rom-com taking notes from a fucking walkie-talkie.
Yep.
This is our end game.
I'll take any help I can get.
But on that note, we're out of here.
Sounds good.